Geekscapists, we got a brand new Marvel film. We're talking about Chloé Zhao's Eternals. It came out in theaters, and we gave you a couple days to watch it. I'm going to be talking all about it. Does it work? Does it not work? Is it too dense? Are we going to see the Eternals ever again in the Marvel Universe? There's a lot to talk about on this one. Luckily, we got our own little Uatu, the Watcher, Ian Kerner, helping me out here on a brand new Geekscape special. Let's let her rip. Here we go. All right, Geekscapists, we got a pretty dense one to get through on this special. We're talking about Chloé Zhao's Eternals. This movie has a lot of people talking about whether or not they liked it, didn't like it, if it works, doesn't work. Is it the worst Marvel film ever? I guess, according to Rotten Tomatoes. If you listen to Rotten Tomatoes, I don't think you should listen to Rotten Tomatoes. I think you should listen to yourself and discover this movie on your own. It's not like any other Marvel movie out there. So I'll start off by saying that this is the Geekscape Eternals Special. We're going to be talking all about it. So if you've not seen the movie, we're going to spoil the hell out of it. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, on, let's see, we got the iTunes, the Spotify, really wherever podcasts are available, we got you. If you have friends who want to hear more about what the Eternals are all about, well, Ian's going to be breaking down differences between the film version and the comics and stuff like that. You're going to want them to hear that. So hit that share button. Tell your friends all about it. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you're watching it live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Facebook, hit like that little bell button. If they got one of them bells, like hit that so you know when we're coming up. And you can be live with us. You can start talking little comments with us. And yeah. Or, you know, if you haven't seen the movie, make like Jim Pelgrinelli and say, oh, I'm going to have to bow out as I have not seen the movie. Yes, we're going to be spoiling a lot of it. Meanwhile, Mark M's over on YouTube and he goes, whoa, spoiler talk. I can't wait. Okay, well, good. Y'all are adequately pumped up for this. So I think it's time to have our gaze go skyward to Geekscape's own watcher. We're talking about Ian, who knows all the geek stuff. He knows all of it. He is our own resident Uatu. That's Ian Kerner right here. Ian, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm good. We were going to record this on Friday, and things were getting busy, and then I said, you know what? Let's give everybody a chance to watch the movie. And here we are on Monday breaking it down because this is a pretty dense film, and I don't even know if you liked it or not. I know we've traded a few texts over the weekend about this, but let's just start there. Like, is this a movie that you like? And if so, why? Because I don't think it's simply a binary yes or no on this one.
It's not a binary yes or no. There's definitely things I liked, but there's a lot of things that bugged me. And what's really, really frustrating about this movie, and so many people I've talked to feel this way, is there's a good movie there, but it was just not executed properly.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I want to say to start off that, you know, it's literally going like, how did, you know, Kevin Feige, who's been such a master at, and listen, you know, people that are regular listeners will know that, you know, as big fans as we both are, we don't love every one of them. There have been a few that really disappointed us. Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3. But, you know what I mean? Like, there have definitely been a few that were a bit off, but they didn't suffer this way. I mean, this thing is slow. There's some basic, you know, storytelling mistakes made here, you know? I mean, it's over 2.5 hours and you feel like there's major holes in it.
I'll actually say that some of the Marvel films I'm super into, and then like halfway through, there's a tone shift or something going on that completely takes me out of it, or vice versa. Maybe there's some stuff that's not completely gelling. And I think that this is a film that, like you said, could gel really well with a script revision and then an editing revision. And these are major revisions. So I don't think maybe the material's not there, But ultimately, this is a film that just off the bat, I found really dense, and I enjoyed it because it was different than the formula. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad this movie exists. I'm glad there's getting people a lot to talk about. I'm glad that the Marvel formula was questioned and challenged. I like that they went for something this gutsy. But I'm also the opinion that if you're going to get somebody with a neorealistic bend like Chloé Zhao, and you're going to go for material like this that's dense and not formulaic, and you're going to approach it, let's go all in. Let's really let's really double down on what we're trying to make here, and not end up somewhere in the middle where there are scenes that feel familiar but aren't quite as exciting as what we've seen from the Marvel formula before. Meanwhile, we have scenes that are neorealistic again in the filmmakers are like artistic style, but are also feeling like they're being held back by the adherence to being a Marvel film. So I say, like, either go all in or you go all out on this thing. And this movie kind of sits in the middle. And it has a lot of weird shifts in it. It has a lot of pacing issues, like you talked about. But all in all, I gotta say, I came away from this movie on the I liked it side, and I kind of liked it more because I appreciated the attempt, even if it wasn't all successful.
But that's my point. The attempt should have been more successful. It's all there. So
it's all
I'm
there.
not disagreeing with everything you're saying. I'm frustrated that, I mean, look at some of the movies they've done. Look at Endgame. You know, I mean, shit, they had extra time here. You know, like this should have been a masterpiece.
And yeah, there are times when it really wants to be a masterpiece, and
and it's tonally off, and it drags. I mean, look, some of the stuff, and I don't normally start getting into individual performances so much, but I felt Gemma Chan was very badly cast here. You know, she was great in Crazy Rich Asians. I love her in Humans. Okay, I mean, my wife said she's one of the most beautiful women she's ever seen, but flat. Like Cersei should be all fire and passion. Did you get that from her at all?
No, the performances feel restrained. They feel muted, and there are also things like the action sequences that feel muted. There are things like there are a lot of muted decisions in this, and it starts to feel like committee starts to make a lot of these decisions where you win some, you lose some, and we end up with a movie that's somewhere in the middle.
Well, here's an interesting thing about it. So, and Jonathan already said we're going to get into major spoilers. So, one of the ways that they hugely, pardon the pun, deviated from the source material in the comics, the Eternals are created by the Celestials coming to Earth 1 million years ago. All right, and they experiment on humanity, and they have 2 offshoots. First, they have the Deviants. There's like 100 Deviants, and then they have 100 Eternals. And then the Eternals are basically given this mission to prevent too much deviating from the baseline human and not let the Deviants just run roughshod over everything.
And that means like genetic engineering?
Pretty much.
Or killing, because in the case of this movie, it means like just killing humans.
They kill deviants. They, you know, it's basically, I mean, it gets very complicated, and there's like 4 hosts of Celestials. They come at different times. At one point, the deviants like overrun the whole world. Okay, and the Celestials come, and that basically causes the sinking of Atlantis. The deviants had found Lemuria. That was the deviant home, and I mean, and the Eternals couldn't even beat them. There's so many of them. I mean, they just overwhelmed the whole planet. They're controlling humanity. It's ugly. And at this point, so here's the thing. The Eternals are hugely involved in human history in the comics. Okay? This whole we're not really involved thing, no. This is the complete opposite. They're like, basically, the Noah's Ark story is actually the Eternals are leading, you know, humanity after the sacking of everything by the Celestials to put the Deviants down. Okay? So the whole flood thing, that's actually the Celestials did that. Okay? And it's not really Noah. All right, so it's like it's an Eternal that does that. So,
and you still have those like biblical allegories here in the movie. I think I don't think you can avoid those because that's what King Kirby set out to do when he created the Eternals.
And then popping down and going to Mesopotamia is sort of like saying that's there. And you do definitely see there's a few places where they're interacting with humanity, you know, and obviously that's a thing. And they may be suggesting a few other places. You know, leaving Druig in the Amazon. Well, he's clearly being worshipped as a god, right? You know, so I mean, even that, it's like it's inconsistent. You know, Ajax, you know, oh, don't do it, don't control people. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what? I mean, I have to say that when you get into the power set, you know, Ajax's ability is to heal. The rest of them are supposedly quote unquote eternal. They don't have that ability. They all die pretty freaking easily. You know, I mean, seriously? And even her, who that's her ability, and she went out. I mean, it was sad. You know, now, I'm jumping ahead. Because I want to actually think about that whole sequence because the whole thing doesn't make sense to me. But Icarus's plan, all that is like what? And
Yeah.
so maybe we'll jump around a little bit because seriously.
Let me find a way to get to that because my big problem for this movie that I think it fights uphill the entire time because of this, and it kind of finds itself in the negative just from the get-go.
Right.
It's the first.
So I started saying from the speaking of from the get-go. So right away at the beginning, it's they came to Earth 7,000 years ago.
You get that Star Wars crawl that didn't matter
it goes on
at
forever?
all. And it didn't matter. It was the first. It was the first Marvel movie that had a crawl like that before the familiar Marvel flourish logo, and I don't think we needed that crawl because
didn't tell me anything that the movie didn't tell me.
Well, didn't tell you anything that the movie didn't tell you 4 times later on as we hit it over the head. And I got to tell you, the movie acts like the reappearance of a deviant in the modern day in London is the inciting incident for the film when it's not. It is Ajax murder. This movie is a murder mystery. I think it's best when it is a murder mystery that then leads to some of the different.
What's interesting?
What I was going to say was it leads to some of the different, like, questions of morality and what side you're on and what we should be doing and what should we be going against our creator with the creator. But they spend forever, Ian. They spend good 20-30 minutes before that happens, before we discover it happens, worrying about this deviant and trying to lay pipe for this movie to flow and
ultimately go nowhere with that. But let me say this, you're exactly right. And the frustrating thing is it's a murder mystery. The murder's already happened and everyone else doesn't know it except the guy that basically did it.
Yes.
You know, and that's like, it's like, seriously, it's like, all right, great, start off that way. But, you know, then you got to give the background and, you know, we're supposed to care about who she is and the back and forth of when we're supposed to care. I mean, listen, you know, I'm a giant Highlander fan. Done right, going back and forth in the time and all that, you know, is great. And it can be artistic. You know, Russell Mulcahy did I remember seeing the Highlander and, you know, the dissolves he did, the fish tank, the Mona Lisa painting in New York, you know, I mean, were amazing. Yeah. Right, you know, I'm taking the fish tank into the water, you know, all that. Yeah,
but we don't have that here. We got to go to Egypt, and then there's a scene outside of Babylon that you assume is Egypt because suddenly you're thrown into this giant action sequence, but it doesn't give you the context to that until the action sequence is done, and the Eternals have done their traditional Eternal lineup, so that you were reminded that there's 15-30 people in this movie that you don't really know too deeply. I got to tell you, the movie doesn't really get started until 20-30 minutes in, and I can't believe that of all the professionals involved in this, they didn't take this as a minute one framing device to have the movie open with Kumail Nanjiani's sequence with the Bollywood, and then have, you know, his valet come in, the Harish Patel role, come in and start videotaping things and interviewing people and him explaining who each of the Eternals are that we're dealing with at the moment, what their powers are, what their histories are. Oh, that's Thena. You might know her as what the stories say she is. Oh, and that's Icarus. You may know him as what the story, you know, you had this really great framing device, not introduced until 20 minutes into the movie. Yeah. That was very fun. It was easily digestible, and it introduced dense material very quickly and in a good way. It's too late. You get that framing device 20-30 minutes into the movie, and it's already like in the quagmire of narrative where you're like, I don't really know / sadly care what's going on here.
Did you feel like, I almost feel like the whole thing about the London thing was like, hey, let's copy Infinity War. It worked there.
Yeah, it felt very familiar, but ultimately, when you look back,
you see what I mean, right? Like it's Infinity War, they're in the street,
but even then, the advantage Infinity War had was that it came right on the heels of what we saw in Thor Ragnarok, and we knew what was going on there, and we've seen the sequence.
You already cared about those characters.
We already care about what happens here. It ultimately feels like that London sequence is to introduce Kit Harington, a hero that we're not even going to see don his character armor until a movie or two later.
Meanwhile, he's one of the best things in the movie because
Well,
simple word, charisma.
He has charisma. I forgot he was in the movie for long stretches because the meandering was
Because
going
they forgot
away.
he was in the movie.
And then ultimately it's like you get back to him and you're like, oh yeah, this guy's in the movie. It does feel like world building in like a really inorganic way. And those first 20-30 minutes, I don't think the film recovers from. And it's rough because the second you see that Bollywood sequence and you see that valet character and he's introducing people like really easily, that's the tool they should have used to introduce the movie and give you a little bit of I don't know. I think we would have gotten some goodwill going into it if we had a fun way to frame these characters. It needed to be fun. This movie has a lot of no fun.
And by the way, and I wouldn't even mind it if they still did the same, they came down but the first thing you see in the present is that and frame the rest of it that way. Fine. I get it. You want to establish the Eternals came and then you go into that. But I agree with you. That would have been better. Would have been more fun.
Have the Macedonia sequence, then have the Bollywood sequence, and then start doing your back and forth as we progress through history to the modern day as this murder mystery goes. And those flashbacks should be clues. Those flashbacks should be, hey, like, was it Druig? Like, we haven't seen Druig in a few centuries. Right. Let's go visit him in South America, and you can have that sequence with the South America and going there and introducing Druig in that way. But when we see Druig and these characters earlier,
going to go because I was watching it and I felt pretty early on, these deviants, unlike the comics, were not a true threat. They weren't. I mean, at least early on, there was no real plan there, right? Or did it seem like there was?
And so, if one of the Eternals is dead, and it's a murder mystery, the suspects are this generic abstract of an enemy. Well, that's not really. I mean, if you lean into, I think one of us did this, then you actually have some interesting stuff to go with, and then you can do the push and pull on who's loyal, who's not. We haven't seen so and so in a while. We can reintroduce them back into the narrative and go full into this murder mystery idea, and then you have like the Scooby-Doo ending where it's like, oh shit, it was Icarus, and Icarus actually doesn't want us to save humanity. It wants the celestial seed to be born, and you know what? We're gonna have to deal with that. Like, half of us think it's a good idea, half of us don't. It was clunky, and it was very clunky.
Well, yeah, but then let's get into the specifics of. I mean, some of the stuff is deviating, some of it's just bad. I mean,
Diallo says, "Are you talking about the guy in the Bollywood sequence who didn't even show up for the finale?"
Not yet. No, we're actually more talking about the chronicler. About his valet. But we're going to get to Kingo not being in the end of the movie for some inexplicable reason. That Icarus is a complete son of a bitch. But I kind of think he had a right idea, maybe, but maybe not. I love, humanity, but fuck it. I'm just going to go over here and sit down and do nothing.
This is my job.
The Unimind's going to come. It's going to be necessary. But then at the end, I'm going to get judged anyway. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, anyway. Kingo was like, you know what? I'm not going to pick a side. I'm going to step off. And they were like, no, you're judged. Kingo got the short end of the stick. He should have. I mean, he might as well have gotten some good hits in, man.
Damned either way, right? Listen, if they didn't know what to do with him at that point, then just have him on the beach, blasting something. I mean, who gives a shit? But I mean, come on. It doesn't make sense. He should be part of the Unimind. So a couple of times I started saying this and we've gotten sidetracked. This whole notion from the get-go, from the trailer, I was like, oh, this whole they come 7,000 years ago. So I was really bothered by this. I'm like, it's an integral part of who the Eternals are, that they come from humanity. In fact, to me, it's a major aspect of, and going with the promotion materials, this is the Marvel universe, right? Because here's the thing. In the Marvel universe, in this weird way, even though humanity is less evolved compared to other, civilizations, other alien races, but they're really important.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the thing. I mean, it's written that the Celestials think humanity is important. Humanity has this ability, this potential, and that's why, I mean, in a way, not to go off into a different property, but there's a parallel between the Kree come to humanity and they experiment on them and create the Inhumans, and what the Celestials did with the Eternals. Okay, and it's because, and in the same way that you have, per the Marvel comics, beings like the Hulk and Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, who mutate through some outside agent. In the same way, you have
all
mutants.
radioactivity.
Well, but in the same way, you have mutants, and that's so. The idea being that there's something, humanity has this genetic potential. First seen with the Eternals. Okay, so that's a thing. I sort of want to get into the idea of, all right, I love the diversity in the movie, but the diversity to me always makes more sense when they come from humanity.
Yes.
Right. Now, look, there are other examples of alien races that look human. So in that, I guess I'll give it a pass. It doesn't really make sense, but fine. I mean, that's both in the comics and in the movies. The pink skin Kree, because you have Kree that are pink and white and blue. I mean, there's several other examples. Obviously the Asgardians look human, even though they're clearly not. I mean, we can go on with that, but yeah, it's that's still problematic to me. What makes zero sense to me is all the accents. I mean, they actually call out at one point when Icarus has learned the language, and Cersei's like, "Oh, you learned the language. So great, because otherwise we all just speak English." But some of us speak in a really weird accent, and some of us don't. I don't understand.
Yeah,
and
I don't have.
Tell me they develop the accent over time because they separate and lived in certain regions. Fine, but they have the weird accents at the beginning, so I don't get it.
I don't have the problem that the internet has with like the wokeness of this Marvel of this movie, and how we have the first gay on-screen relationship in the MCU.
I don't care about that at all. Great.
I don't care about that stuff at all. I like the fact that this cast is diverse. I think that makes this movie interesting.
I thought it would have been interesting if Makari was deaf because an aspect of her speed and necessitated her being deaf. That would be interesting. Sure. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. But at the end of the
Likewise,
day,
the sprite thing. So here's the thing.
So again,
as I said, the sprite thing.
Yes.
So in the comics, they're created by the Celestials, but they're basically experimenting on humanity, and then they don't age at a certain point. So the idea that Sprite got created and got stuck as an adolescent or whatever, that's fine. But when you actually look at them as essentially robots, to my mind, more not really robot, more synthezoid, like Vision, where it's a true, biological body. It was just created that way. I don't have a problem with that, but it doesn't make sense that they would have created Sprite, unless maybe the idea was, okay, from an infiltrating standpoint, you wanted one that looked younger, and maybe they had an idea on certain missions. But you know what? Maybe so. Give me that. Say that.
And they're not synthezoids in the comics.
No, again, they were offshoots of humanity. It's Celestials experiment on humanity, and simply the Deviants are offshoots of humanity. Now, Deviants don't look human, okay, and Eternals do. And I'm bringing that up for a reason, because we're going to go there about something that is more than suggested in one of the tags. Okay, so that is an important point. In the comics, there's a lot of deviants. At certain points, they get wiped out. They're not eternal, meaning they're not immortal. They die, they procreate like normal. Eternals do not. Eternals cannot procreate.
But they can be brought back by the end, like this engine.
So the Eternals have this machine, and there's an idea, and it literally keeps like backup versions. So an Eternal can be destroyed, but then the machine just regenerates it. So again, that is
kind of in here,
similar to in here with memories alone, and maybe, and by the way, and that remains to be seen if there's a sequel. I say maybe. I'm actually going to say probably anyone that got destroyed comes back exactly that way. The Celestials created them once, they probably can. So they probably will do something like that. That probably, as you say, is somewhat in there. It's just done in a different, more vague way. I mean, the machine is essentially Earth. Now Tiamat, the sleeping Celestial, is
Tiamat.
Very much part of the comics, but not with this idea that's going to feed on life and pop out and destroy the planet. I feel like they really, part of me, they busted their nut here on Galactus.
Explain, because the Tiamat idea has not been the same thing as Galactus in the
Never.
comics.
And
You'd had
now,
Tiamat, you had Franklin Richards shut this thing down when they were doing it back in the 90s. You recently had a dead celestial that the Avengers are working out of in lieu of
right.
Avengers Tower.
They took the body and
They
they
took the
had to
body.
work out of it. And
Mhm.
maybe that's set up here.
But
You
how
know,
is that?
certainly the
How
imagery.
is this? How can you not have Galactus?
Because
in this
Galactus
situation?
basically comes and sucks the life energy out of a planet to sustain himself. Isn't that
Mhm.
exactly how they just said Celestials are born?
Yeah.
Now, maybe the argument is, well, yeah, and Galactus is going to be a rogue Celestial. So maybe that's where they're going with this.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. But I'm saying that because essentially, you know, I mean, all I can think is, are they saying, all right, well, this is how Celestials, you know, are born, and Galactus has his same mission as a being that is basically an agent of the universe, you know, that
Universal
is sort of,
procreation.
yeah, he's from, I mean, as we know, Galactus in the comics is the one survivor from the previous universe, right?
Yes,
And is an agent of bringing about the next, right?
Yeah, but he consumes, and it sounds like here the here they procreate, they create. The whole idea of these celestial seeds is that they
create
more
sons
life
afterwards, but they consume life to do it.
Yeah, but Galactus does not create any life.
Yes,
he only consumes.
Yes. So as I said, maybe what they're thinking is Galactus is going to be related to Celestials in that sense, that whereas the other Celestials have to absorb life and destroy a planet, okay, to be born, Galactus is an evolutionary or universal evolution of that, a different form of Celestial that also is absorbing life of planets.
Yeah,
right?
so
because I'm saying it feels like they've now done that thing of the being that comes and absorbs the planet that they sort of fought here.
As Garrett's pointing out over on YouTube, he says Galactus wants the energy for himself. The worlds that Celestials plant a seed in are just a womb, basically. And we get that. Diallo says Galactus can be the judgment that the Celestials at the end of the film said would be coming to Earth and finding Earth lacking or not. But I don't see Galactus as a tool of celestial judgment.
Back up here. More than that, the Celestials didn't judge humanity here. They're judging the Eternals.
Right.
Okay. Now, I feel that what happened in that Unimind is Tiamat became part of the Unimind, and in merging with the Eternals, felt humanity should live rather than he should. I frankly think, in a way, the judgment already happened. That was the judgment of humanity. Okay, and that's the only reason they were successful is Tiamat allowed them and sort of gave them the power to do it.
When they say they uniminded with Tiamat, and he went into a nascent role. He went into like a sleep.
I mean, she transmuted him. It's not clear whether he's completely dead or not, or is he transmuted in a way that he's gone. I thought the idea was they were killing him.
I thought that they were going to they were putting his physical form to sleep, and that he was some form of granite, ice, or 7-Eleven slushy by the end of the film.
Well, certainly the granite thing, and that's why I feel like they may or may not go there with, you know, obviously in the comics, you know, the Avengers now, you know, operate out of the body.
Right.
So,
talking about the tone of the movie, Garrett's back on the YouTube, and he says, I don't mean this in a negative or tribalistic way, but this felt like a DC movie in many facets. A friend of
mine said the very same thing.
I mostly mean the sensibilities of what it explored and how it framed its heroes. He goes on to say, I saw that Chloé Zhao said that Man of Steel was a point of reference, and I can see some of the DNA in this.
I definitely see that.
What do you think?
I definitely agree with that. I mean, listen, just the bleakness alone, right? I mean, it really felt just dreary, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. You have the bleakness, but then I actually like the sequence with Cersei and Icarus, where it was like watching what Chloé Zhao does well with this neorealist style, and just kind of showing moments and this and that. I don't understand why they're still dressed like Eternals while they're living amongst like developing peoples. But all right, but she had these really pretty pictures and this nice stuff.
There were
When you
definitely
see
moments where it was beautiful.
that stuff is great, but then you go into the high concept sequences with the action sequences, or when there's 10 people in a room together talking, and the blocking is all over the map, and that just felt like second unit. That felt really crowded. It felt like the eye lines were all over the map. It felt like people were standing in different places from shot to shot. That did not lend itself to the neorealist, like, let's just flow with the camera style, where I'm like, okay, like, images aren't literal. This stuff is like passing over time. People are moving in different places. You get that in the sex scene between or the love scene. I'm just going to call it the love scene. Let's not call it the sex scene. It's a love scene between Icarus and Cersei. You get some really nice, beautiful stuff, but you know it happens over the passage of time. But then you get that same kind of mushy blocking in like conversational scenes, like the one in the church, the one at the top of the temple in South America. And you're just like, whoa, where is everybody standing in relation to each other? This feels rushed or directed by committee. I think of a horror story I heard, and it's up to you whether or not this is true. The rumor is that on Amazing Spider-Man 1, there is and the way that, you slate the camera is like you get shot A, shot B, right? You slate so you can say like takes and numbers, right? Scenes and numbers, shots and letters, takes and numbers. And so you go A, B, C, D, you work your way down. Once you've gone through the entire alphabet, you start to do A, B, B, C, C. Supposedly, this is the rumor, that on that first Mark Webb Amazing Spider-Man, just a simple dialogue scene between Kirk Connors and Peter Parker, they were going well into the double letters, and they were doing like multicams, and they were just like, just for a dialogue scene, they were shooting well into the 30-40 shot options, and it's messy. And supposedly it was like, the rumor is it was Sony's 3D department being like, we need all these shots, we'll figure it out later in editing. There felt like a little bit of that. Let's figure it out in editing. Let's shoot the heck out of everything, and things got a little messy. I would like to see them go all in on Chloé Zhao's style. And if you're talking about things like creation and loyalty, and where do we come from, and are we our own, even though we're replications of things that have come in the past, and are our memories unique, or are they copies of past memories? Are we unique, or are we copies of past things? Like, these are big heady ideas, and I think that they should be treated in big heady ways. They go nowhere with them, and it all falls back to nowhere.
They do,
but
so
it falls back to, let's just smack each other on a beach. And I was like, when okay, let's talk about that Athena Deviant scene at the end, where the Deviant clearly is talking. It's now sentient. It's taken several of their powers, the ability to heal, and it's taken Gilgamesh's strength. And I'm like, okay, this Deviant is now talking. It can now talk about its fears, and everybody in this movie knows that the celestial seed is going to destroy the earth if it erupts. The Deviant's job is to stop that, and half the Eternals' jobs are now to stop that. There are a couple Eternals here that now have the same motivation as this Deviant to stop the celestial seed from erupting.
Straight out says, we're the good guys. We're not the good guys here.
She just straight up kills the motherfucker. She just kills him. Like, why did she kill him? Why did they not find some interesting way to progress the relationship?
Yeah, why did they do all of that to have it not matter? Ooh, hey, guess what? Well, that was a twist. Are they just subverting expectation? I mean,
nice twist. I'm now going to chop your head off in 3 ways.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Like, would have been more interesting if the Deviant had to actually join with them and help, right? And that would have been, it's an interesting message anyway.
It would have been evolution, which is what this movie is about.
You think? I mean, by the way, you say that it's about evolution. So, I mean, I was a bit confused here. So we find out that Icarus discovered, after the earthquakes, because Tiamat's waking up, some deviants, came out of the ice. We don't know how he found it, but he just happened to find them. And whatever that was,
man, he flies around. Superheroes go on patrol, dog. Like, that's what they do.
He finds that out. Now, he's known for 500 years about what the real plan is. He goes to Ajax And
7
Ajax
days
suddenly,
prior, 8 days
7
prior,
days before everything else. But he goes to Ajax, and he finds out in that moment that Ajax doesn't intend to, wants to try to stop Tiamat from rising and destroying the Earth. And he already has this plan in place to take her to the Deviants and have them kill her. But what doesn't make sense is he didn't know she was going to do that. Icarus sees Deviants who are alive. He, A, should have been trying to kill them immediately, and B, should have been calling everyone in to come help and kill them. Not, well, let me just leave them over here just in case I might need them to set up for a murder that I have no reason to commit yet.
Because he's known about them being there for 500 years, is what you're saying.
No, he's known about the plan for 500 years that the Earth is going to get destroyed.
Okay.
But the Deviants come out. The first thing he should do is kill them. Because that's their whole thing. They kill Deviants or tell everyone, hey, the Deviants back, we got to kill them.
And he wants the Earth destroyed, yeah.
But they present here this idea that, well, as soon as he finds out that Ajax doesn't want to kill them, he can't just kill her himself. He needs, to use them as the scapegoat. But why would he even have left them alive and not said anything to anyone to begin with to have the scapegoat? He didn't know he needed the scapegoat yet.
And then once he kills her, why would he then use his pretty specific eye blast to cut a giant hole in anger across her farm? Because that seems like a fingerprint. If
I'll give you that
ever
too.
heard of one.
By the way, and after she does that, so at that point, is it, well, okay, maybe the argument is he doesn't need to kill them because Earth's about to get destroyed anyway, so it doesn't matter at this point. Is that it? Maybe I'm thinking extemporaneously here.
If he kills them, then they don't go to London, and you can't introduce the Black Knight, which is how I feel like that opening. That's what I feel like that opening was.
Does he not feel a need to kill them? Story-wise, does he not need to kill them because Earth's about to get destroyed anyway? They don't matter. Is that the idea?
I don't think we should be able to guess those. I don't think it should be the audience's job to project that stuff to make a movie make sense. The movie should just make sense.
I agree with you. That really bothered me.
Yes.
Again, he brings her there. He throws her down. I mean, she goes out fucking quick. Like, at least I was thinking, all right, there's all these deviants down there. She's just going to get swarmed. It takes a second. I mean, and then, so are we just supposed to accept that the one deviant tentacle dude, let's just call him Tentacle Dude. Yeah. I thought they'd actually end up calling him Warlord Crow, who's the leader of the deviants in the comics. They don't even, No.
And he's going to get his head cut off 3 different ways.
Why does he have tentacles that absorb genetic material? Why is that a thing?
I don't know.
I mean, how does evolution? It's not even evolution. He's been frozen for 500 years. Like what? What?
He evolves when he starts sucking on Eternals. He kind of evolves then, but you're asking some hard questions.
I don't understand.
I don't know. You're asking them really hard questions. None of this really makes sense.
So he kills Ajax. So I think from there he's popping up to kill the other Eternals because he knows where they are because he got her memories, right?
Okay.
I think.
I just have to give you things now because I don't know what's happening.
I'm just throwing it out. I think that's where they're going there. All right, they're the baddie, but not really. And then Icarus is making jokes about leading the Avengers. And he's a superhero.
The whole time he knows he's killed people.
Yeah, he's a total dick. He's never leading the Avengers. He never has any intention of leading the Avengers.
He might kill the Avengers.
As is often the case in many of these movies, and I think we said the same thing when watching Aquaman, is where the fuck are the Avengers while there's earthquakes and all this shit happening? No one just shows up. Like, you tell me the movie happens over a couple of hours, I get it. But over a whole week, there got to be other people investigating.
Yeah, it's 7 days, and there are earthquakes everywhere, and you don't even get one shot of Thor trying to keep a street lamp straight up.
You have news reports, but no one's even asking the question.
They're tired, man. Like, you don't understand. Endgame really made them tired.
Jonathan, I have to say this. I have to call you out here. I know, we have the joke that you made a mistake. And I
totally made a mistake.
Gilgamesh was Wong. But honestly, where was Wong?
Yeah, Gilgamesh.
Just, poured into whatever.
I remember the quick shots of the trailer. I was like, "Oh, I think Wong's in this movie." It was Don Lee, who y'all know from Train to Busan. Have you seen Train to Busan, Ian? It's the best zombie movie the last 5-6 years. It's awesome. And that's the first time I saw him. Yeah,
but I'm saying, but no joke. I mean, we've literally now seen, it was one thing in Doctor Strange, but one of my favorite aspects of both Infinity War, Endgame, and then Shang-Chi is, you know what? The Doctor Strange movie wasn't lip service. These sorcerers that are guarding the earth, they do show up and do shit. You know, we haven't seen it before, but they actually do show up, right? That's what Wong showed us. Wong's actively doing stuff, right? He's
not in this movie.
They're watching.
No, like Thanos is done. You take a breather. I'll be back. I'll punch the clock in about a week. Let's go ahead and let like Falcon Winter Soldier happen. Let's let WandaVision happen. Let's let a lot of these things happen. We'll be back in. We'll be back in a little bit.
WandaVision happens very quickly.
Sure.
You know, we're watching episodes, but it's not a long time. Falcon Winter Soldier, I get that, but this is global shit. You know, like it does. You know, I mean, there's earthquakes, all this. Again, as I said. In Aquaman, we said the same thing. How is Superman not showing up for what's going on in Aquaman? It's too big to have no one else. When you've established these other characters exist, to have no one showing up.
Entire undersea war.
You know, at least as bad as it was, it's a deep dive here. But in this Supergirl movie, you know, the '80s, Helen Slater, they straight up tell you Superman is off planet. Because where the fuck is Superman if he's not off planet? You got it. You know, I mean,
early in the movie, in what I'm not going to call the opening, but I'm going to call the introduction of the Black Knight character, because that is not my chosen introduction of this movie.
Dane Whitman, he's not the Black Knight yet.
Okay, you get the introduction of the Whitman character. They have the explanation like, why didn't you do anything with Thanos? And they're like, we couldn't get involved. That does not go the other way around. That is not their rule. That's your rule. They could totally get involved. Where were you? Yeah, I'm like, Dane.
But by the way, exactly.
Dane, go get your sword, dog.
They got involved in Babylon. Oh, well, this is not our thing. There weren't deviants involved. Right. Actually, it turns out, no, it wasn't deviant. It was another fucking Eternals, what it was. Okay? So, why? Isn't that even worse?
And I still kind of liked this movie.
And by the way, like Thanos comes, he blinks out after. So I'm glad you brought up Thanos. Let's talk about that for a second, because I love this idea. So
I can't control him, Geekscape. Geekscape, he's out of control now. I can't control him. I will not try and control him.
Population gets to be a certain point. It's generating the life energy. Thanos does the snap. Now, in Infinity War, he does this whole Malthusian drill spiel about like, oh, society, planet lived on, resources, all that, you know. I mean, okay, great, you know? So Thanos did this across the whole universe. Is Thanos the good guy now? Did Thanos actually save Earth, like, for probably
5 years?
No, more. No. If not for the counter snap, wiping out half the population would have saved them a lot more than 5 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it seems like the Celestial was about to give birth right before Endgame, or right before Infinity War, because like the second those 5,000, the second half those people come back, it's like, all right, I'm ready to wake up. There's enough going on here.
You know, as often happens, you know, you get scenes in trailers and then they're not in the movie, and that was like the whole thing, the breakdown of, oh, you know, we've seen the trailer, but Spider-Man, you know,
but that seemed like, hey, this is not going to feel like a Marvel movie, but it is a Marvel movie. We just have to tell you it's a Marvel movie. Please come opening weekend. It's a Marvel movie.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the trailer they said it was the energy of the snap that did it, but in actuality, no, it was just the population, right?
Absolutely, I remember that the snap coming back is what triggered this whole deal. In the trailer, I totally remember that. That was probably from a cut that was mixed a year ago.
Right. So not the actual movie. So the actual movie, it's saying it's the population, leading to the point I'm making that, and you said yourself as well that like, so Tiamat would have come 5 years sooner, you know, but Thanos saved it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So okay, listen. Bottom line, as you said, is like, this, we can't get involved. That's just stupid. I mean,
it doesn't make sense. No.
It doesn't make any sense at all, especially when you find out he's actually an Eternal. And you kind of think, like, wouldn't they be able to recognize other Eternals?
We can't get involved. We're just going to give them the wheel and the atom bomb.
Yeah, because by the way, like, shouldn't Ajax know that Thanos is an Eternal? Everyone else cannot know, but Ajax doesn't have her memories altered. Yeah. She remembers everything.
Yeah, in that, like, I mean, Faustos' character is the epitome of involvement.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like he takes himself out after the atom bomb to no
Great.
longer be
He's
involved.
been
But up
getting
to
involved
that
left and
point,
right.
he's like,
Left
here
and
you
right.
go, here's this. Like he's all about
Which,
it.
by
I
the
just
way,
it's
is
very
consistent.
messy.
That's consistent with the comics.
Sure.
You know, that they did that they got involved with humanity throughout history.
Was there anything else that like jumped out at you that was a deviation from the comics that you
There's a
were
bunch of
like,
stuff.
wait a
So
minute?
let's talk about a few things. So the Mad Weary thing with Thena is actually something you see in the comics with Cersei. You know, in the comics, you do have Cersei involved with Dane Whitman at a certain point. Now, interestingly, in the comics, there's never a romance between Cersei and Icarus. In fact, it's actually a romance in the past between Cersei and Makari, who's actually male in the comics. But then in modern times, Cersei gets involved with Dane Whitman. There's a love triangle between Dane Whitman and Crystal from the Inhumans, who is estranged from Quicksilver. And you know, so basically at that time, Crystal, Black Knight, and Cersei are all Avengers. In fact, both Gilgamesh and Cersei are Avengers at later at a certain point.
And my theory right here is that, and I said this on the last Geekscape, that we are heavily into the 70s on this point, like in
Right
Marvel
now,
Comics.
I'm talking 90s, but
I know, but like with the Eternals, with this stuff, all but for the Fantastic Four and the original X-Men, like we've done the 60s, we're now heavily into the 70s, and I think that if we introduce the X-Men, that is going to put us into the 80s continuities, that we can start seeing some of those X-Men comics and maybe some of those Fantastic Four comics. We're gonna have to retroact some of those Fantastic Four stories.
Well,
but,
as you know, that's what I hope.
Yeah.
I seriously hope that both with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, they should not be just their origin should not be now. They should already exist because they're elder statesman characters. You know, they're too much leaders.
That's not going to happen. Because we end up with the same problem we do. We have here where like the Eternals sat in their hands during all this shit.
Now the Fantastic Four, you could bring the Fantastic Four in and have them be, first of all, two things. With a multiverse, you could retcon it in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
As if it's a reset.
Yes.
And also they could have been in the negative zone for 20 years or something.
In the X-Men, they're in hiding because they're mutants.
Maybe.
All of them?
I mean, you're losing sight of the fact that with the first X-Men movie back in '99, that's what they said, that they've been in hiding and they've had missions.
But there were 6 of them.
Well,
you think Disney merchandising is going to be cool with 6 of them?
There's
going to be 30 X-Men in the first movie. The first movie is going to have 40 X-Men in them.
We don't know that. Do we know that?
I know. Well, I'm saying with Disney merchandising, you think they're going to be okay?
I don't know. I think, honestly, just the idea that they're calling it the mutants is suggesting that it's going to be lots of them. And I'd be really surprised if they don't do a multiverse kind of thing. I mean, we've been speculating on this for a while. These are heady concepts that they've done in the comics that, is maybe expecting a lot for mass audiences to understand, right? The idea of, hey, this origin happened a long time ago and now it's part of the whole continuity. It's just like Miles Morales existing, with Peter. I mean, that's the thing. In the comics, you have a separate universe and decide to bring it all into the same universe and go, yeah, they always existed together and it doesn't really line up,
Let's just have Harish Patel introduce all of the bigger concepts and things with his documentary camera.
But what I wanted to suggest to you is, Ant-Man showed us that you could have had these characters around exactly the way at the very end of Iron Man, Nick Fury and Samuel Jackson showed up and said, did you think you were the only one? There's plenty out there. This has been going on. You're not the only one. There's other things going on that you don't know about.
So talk to me, Ian, about these post-credit scenes, if you will.
I will.
What's this first one with Skyfox?
Star Fox.
Whatever. Skyfox 64 on the N64.
Skyfox is Jupiter's Legacy, buddy.
Skyfox is... Okay, Star Fox is the video game.
Well, Star Fox is Eros's code name in the Avengers.
Which one's the video game, Ian?
Star Fox is the movie and Avengers.
All right. There's going to be a lot of confusion when the marketing comes out.
So, first of all, we start with Pip the Troll.
Okay.
So Pip the Troll is a really big deal, yes, for a different franchise. So Guardians of the Galaxy one of the interesting things about Guardians of the Galaxy is in the comics that the movie sort of, went off of, what became the core Guardians of the Galaxy were a lot of characters were around, for a long time.
Let me just pause you right there because Garrett's starting to say Star Fox London. Come on now. I know the character in the Marvel Comics is called Star Fox. There's also a video game on Nintendo called Star Fox. It has an entire franchise behind it.
But you said Sky Fox, Jonathan. Anyway.
I know Sky Fox is oh geez.
Got it. Let's keep going.
Okay, so this Star Fox character.
No, I'm talking about Pip the Troll. Shut up.
Fuck.
So Pip the Troll. So the Guardians, they picked, a very contemporary lineup of Guardians of the Galaxy, all right? But way back when, that's right, Pip time. Adam Warlock was a character that was created, back a ways by Jim Starlin. Brilliant creator who also created Thanos, among other things.
If you're going to LA Comic Con, you can see me on the main stage talking to Jim Starlin on Sunday.
Is that this Sunday?
December 5th.
December 5th, that's your birthday.
Yep, and I get for my birthday to talk to the creator of Thanos in Star Fox.
I'm actually supposed to be at Disneyland that weekend. I'm
going to have him sign a copy of Star Fox 64, a very good video game for the N64.
I'm going to Disneyland for my stepson's birthday, which is December 1st. Even though my birthday is December 3rd, we're going to Disneyland that weekend.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll discuss it at a different time. But anyway, you keep throwing me off here. Do you want me to discuss this or not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I mean,
Pip the Troll. Pip the Troll.
So Pip the Troll was created with Adam Warlock and Gamora. Okay, so Gamora, was very, very tightly involved with Adam Warlock. And when I say tightly involved, I mean as involved as you can get. Okay. So, and Pip the Troll was basically, an Adam Warlock sidekick. So we know, as was suggested at the end of Guardians 2, and based on all the announcements, that Guardians 3 is very much going to be Adam Warlock.
Yes, sir.
So the idea of Pip the Troll popping in strongly suggests, a tie to that franchise. Now, I had read an article that was interesting. They suggested something very interesting, which is that this movie's been done for a while, and the Pip the Troll animation really didn't look very good.
Looked a little gooey.
Yeah, and the suggestion that I've read is that, they scrambled because the idea that James Gunn may be going to use Pip the Troll, and they've changed his look from what maybe they originally had intended in this movie.
So this is a new version, yeah.
It suggested that maybe they did the best they could with what the new rendition is with very little time. I'm not saying that's, definitely the case, but I've seen that suggested, and we'll see. Okay. But I would be surprised if Pip the Troll does not show up in Guardians 3.
Does that mean that some of these Eternals that are in search of their judged brethren, does that mean that some of them may appear in a Guardians film?
Maybe.
Okay, because I don't see an Eternals 2 happening. I do see the Eternals coming in. I see a couple of them being peppered throughout the cosmic universe.
Here's the problem with that speculation. I read earlier today that Guardians 3 is in production started, like now. So, and I would expect if Guardians 3 wasn't literally starting to shoot now, if it was a year away, I would think that's if they decide not to do an Eternals 2, that is a place to pick that stuff up. It's probably too late to put that in the movie. It wasn't already intended to be in them.
I think that storyline of going to rescue the judged Eternals needs to be its own storyline. It can't be piggybacking a Guardians film.
I agree.
But I think we're going to see elements of that in other films. I think we're going to see
Pip can disappear, pop up where we want.
Oh, right, he's a teleporter.
So, yes. So that's the question to me is, are we getting Pip in Guardians 3?
Okay, so tell me about the Star Fox.
So Star Fox, Eros is his real name. Is Thanos' brother. So let's talk about Thanos because we're talking about the Eternals.
Different moms. It looks like different moms. It looks like Thanos' mom.
Actually not.
But Thanos looks like a Californian raisin that went to the gym.
So do you want me to talk about it or not?
Okay, tell me, please.
So in the comics, Eternals can't have kids. But so what happened is 2 different times there was a falling out among Eternals. And there was 100 Eternals in the comics. And there was a falling out, and different factions left Earth, and they founded a colony on Titan. Okay, and then that colony got wiped out, but there was one survivor. Then, you know, millennia later, and still we're talking about like 100,000 years ago. There was another falling out. This time between Zuras, who at this time is the leader of the Eternals, and his brother Alars. Again, it doesn't make sense because they can't have kids, but they were able to have kids at one point, but they couldn't. So it's very back and forth. But anyway, Alars wanted to create more Eternals, and Zuras didn't think it was a good idea. And the Unimind always exists in the comics as this way the Eternals come together. They vote that way. The Unimind is also a weapon. If they're all together, they can fire psionic energy. When, you know, all of them join it, and, you know, and like go against a major foe or something like that. But so Alars left. He marries Susan on Titan, and he uses something called the quantum bands that he's given as a cosmic protector. It's a whole thing. Their father, you know, who had died, Cronus, you know, is like a cosmic agent. Anyway, it doesn't matter except that down the line, the quantum bands end up with Quasar, another cosmic character that I expect we'll probably see pretty soon.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But they use the quantum bands to have kids. And the first kid they have is Thanos, and the second kid is Eros. They're the only kids. There aren't other kids. But one of the things that's been called out a lot is, as I said earlier, the deviants all don't look, you know, they look weird. They don't look human, except there's one deviant that is like an outcast, because he's called the outcast, because he looks human even though he's a deviant. And then you have Thanos, who's an Eternal. It's a Titanium Eternal, basically, who looks like a deviant.
Okay.
And it's just that simple. There's no explanation.
Or roided out California reason.
The second he's born, his mother freaks out. Oh, he doesn't look right, and he's evil, and there's something wrong with him. Of course, he does kill her. You know,
that's rough. That's a rough criticism. Yeah, he does not take feedback well.
No, he kills her. But
so where do you see this Eros? Yeah, so Eros, and I know the whole story with She-Hulk. I know this whole story about like Eros being a bit of a Me Too character because
Eros' ability is literally to, you know, his power is charisma, and Eros, he's definitely about, you know, hooking up and having fun and Dionysian pleasures.
I love that they cast Harry Styles in this role. Yeah,
and the suggestion of whether or not people are fully you know, acting of their own volition. I mean, you say Me Too, let's be clear, that storyline goes all the way back to the 80s about Eros having used his powers to hook up with people that wouldn't have otherwise. Right. You know, and whether or not that's really not okay. And it causes a problem for him within the Avengers because he does it. Thinking, hey, everyone's having a good time, but, you know, not really. I mean, listen, it's very Purple Man, right? It's just not as blatantly against their will.
So where do you see this going? They're going to go and hunt for their friends and try and rescue them. And can that be in another movie?
That is the setup seemingly for Eternals 2. But I have to ask, you know, it's interesting. Usually with the tags, you get one for the next one in the franchise and one for the bigger franchises.
Sure.
So then I would argue that that's that. And then the Black Knight thing, well,
that's the one for the sequel. That's the one for the sequel. Got it. Is that what you're saying? That would be the one for Eternals 2. Yes.
Yes. And then the Black Knight one is not.
If we don't get Eternals 2, where do you see that landing? And we'll talk about the Black Knight one. If we don't get Eternals 2,
would have been in a Guardians 3 which, you know, I think it can't be there because that's happening too soon.
Yeah.
James Gunn doesn't intend to do a Guardians 4, doesn't mean there isn't one.
We can still have a Marvel Cosmic Hootenanny going on. We can see that in a Thor film. We can see that in a Warlock film.
See it in another Thor film, or just because there won't necessarily be. My understanding is what
we can see it in a Fantastic Four film. We can see that in a future Cosmic
about
film.
what James Gunn has said is this iteration of Guardians. This is it. It doesn't mean there isn't another Guardians, but it might literally be another Guardians, like a different group. Or maybe there'll be some carry through, but not all of the same.
Yeah, they shift up like the Avengers do. I totally get that the Guardians have a rotating. They have a rotating lineup. Yeah,
and a rotating mission plan, and all kinds of things. I mean, there have been versions where it's super cosmic. I mean, you give us the Beta Ray Bill, give us the Silver
Quasar, give us Quasar, Nova.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Nova, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nova supposedly is coming.
I know my stuff, Ian.
I mean, Richard Rider Nova is supposedly coming.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Is arguably set up by the Xandarians getting wiped out by Thanos. Supposedly, I mean, my understanding was they were going to stick Nova in already, and then they just kept not doing it.
Yeah, you see the Nova Corps, fine, but yeah. So Ian, Garrett's here, and he says that this Black Knight, Richard Madden was
That's
Icarus.
Right. Exactly.
This Kit Harington sequence at the end where has this sword that's been in his family, and that Black Knight. Tell me about the sword. Tell me who Black Knight's powers
actually
are.
name dropped. I thought that was interesting. They name dropped the Ebony Blade, so it's the Ebony Blade.
What's the story on the Ebony Blade?
Well, it's cursed.
Crafted by Merlin.
It goes back to Sir Percy and Merlin and the Arthurian legend. It's an interesting choice. They've definitely done times with the Black Knight with some of the mystical stuff. Like, for instance, the Ebony Blade's better than wood on a vampire through the heart. Like the Ebony Blade's going to do it. So I think it's to me, that was a really cool choice.
That we had off screen, Blade introduced through his voice. Supposedly that was Marshall Ali talking.
Straight out. I mean, Chloé Zhao actually said in an interview that it was.
Okay.
So
why off screen? Why would you not want him to step in on screen? Not that there wasn't daylight coming through that window, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
they probably didn't have him to do it.
No. Yeah. It's a good call. Good call.
Off screen, it's just ADR.
He did it on Zoom. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. So what? I mean, could we have a Midnight Suns movie? Like what? Like Garrett's in the chat saying, "Are we going to get a supernatural side of the MCU that they're building to, where we have Black Knight and Blade together? It's not just a Blade movie. Maybe Black Knight's in a Blade movie."
No, I think straight up, it's Black Knight's in the Blade movie. I think that's what they're telling us there, that he'll be in it. Listen, the same way, look. Say what you will about the Wesley Snipes movies, and I mean, I think the first one's great. I enjoy all of them.
I think Trinity, the second one's awesome too.
Yeah, Trinity has its issues, but I like the Hannibal King in it.
Yes.
I mean, I like the character-wise. I like that he's in it.
And Ian, are you watching What We Do in the Shadows? Because Donald Logue.
I love What We Do in the Shadows.
But have you caught up with it? Those Donald Logue cameos are amazing, hysterical, and he's referencing Blade left and right. Yeah. Continue. I'm sorry about that.
So yeah, I think that I think that they're basically telling us because Blade should be going to production imminently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're telling us that's where they're going to pick him up again. Look, Cersei's off planet, so clearly, I mean, yes, it's possible. Let's say we're in a universe where they make an Eternals 2 in a couple of years. Should we be? Is there any reason why that movie is looking at Dane Whitman on Earth? When the Cersei's adventures and whatever she's going through aren't on Earth, no,
they're going to break
set him up, and now he's going to go forward elsewhere, and and maybe ultimately there was a plan or an idea that she'll eventually come back, and maybe listen. Here's the thing that I think we said a few times now. I think we're literally building to the Avengers reforming in these movies, and not for a while. We won't have an Avengers movie, not in this phase, because it's gonna happen. I think we're going to get.
Is Sam Wilson Captain America going to be in this phase, or Phase 5?
I think Sam Wilson Captain America is this phase.
Because you need that before you do another Avengers movie. Yeah.
Well, yes, absolutely. And they wouldn't have announced the movie that's going to be in the next phase. I think that's definitely this phase. But I think that we know they're doing. It's basically going to be Thunderbolts, which is Thunderbolts is going to really be Dark Avengers. I've said this before.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get that, and the Avengers will reform an answer to it, and
not
it's going to be
Kang or some of these other big
I'd also, as you know, I don't think that it won't be Young Avengers. They'll call it Champions. Sure. Again, two similar concepts, but they'll go with the one, because saying Dark Avengers, saying Young Avengers, well, no one would name their team that, but it's going to be that concept. I mean, they're steadily setting that up. All those characters are all getting introduced. It's a phase or two away.
Garrett's saying that there was news about that Werewolf by Night movie. We shared that in text, you and I, on Disney Plus. So I think we're getting some more supernatural event going on in the multiverse story. I'm guessing that Werewolf by Night Disney Plus series. I'm guessing that I just want to think that that's something that's going to be out next Halloween.
Series, that announcement was a one shot.
Right, but is that something that would land around Halloween? It's got Gabriel Garcia Bernal in it.
Halloween.
And would that be a Blade story? And is Blade going to be cool now that Sony's kind of pushed themselves into the MCU? Is Blade going to be cool with Mobius just running around? Dr. Morbius just running around?
I mean, look. unless and until we have Disney absorb Sony, and then they have the giant multiversal event, which is probably a couple of phases away, that ends with a unified universe, which is in essence basically the status quo at the beginning of Loki sort of being reestablished.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think that's really something that matters. I mean, what's very confusing about Morbius is seeing Michael Keaton.
Yes, because
seeing the Vulture.
Yes, because he is MCU, but in Venom, it's Venom 2. It's established to
look,
because he has to go through a shift in dimension to get to the MCU.
But not necessarily.
So what the hell's happened? But they reference Venom in Morbius. So
because multiverse. Here's the thing. So we're a month and a half out from No Way Home, but No Way Home, we've already seen Doc Ock. Now, yes, it's the Doc Ock from the Tobey Maguire Sam Raimi movies, but he died. So there's a universe out there in which he didn't die.
Pulled out of time, yes.
Right? Not necessarily pulled out of time. It's a multiverse. Look, think of the Kangs.
He didn't die, right?
There's a universe in which basically that Doc Ock didn't die. Likewise, in the Morbius Venom Sonyverse.
Oh shit. Okay.
Sony Marvel universe, in that whatever number that is of the multiverse, there can be a Michael Keaton Vulture that exists. He's just not continuing the story of the Vulture that we saw in Homecoming. Although, follow me here, he actually can be continuing the story, but that's a divergent. So everything that happened there sort of could happen for him, but probably not, because they did feel the need to move Venom over. So I mean, we know, or we think that a version of Peter Parker exists in that Venom verse. Let's call it
back in New York, because they referenced it in the first one.
Well, they only lightly referenced it.
They said there's that thing with the photographer back in New York. Yeah, we know, we get it.
Yes. So
what a silly little. Okay, this all believe anyway.
I think
but
we're going to
get
get some answers to that in No Way Home, but maybe not. I think clearly, as we've already said in that podcast, Venom was moved over to the normal MCU Marvel universe that Tom Holland's Spider-Man that we've been watching is part of. Okay, so he moved over for that movie. He's going to show up. As to whether or not he'll get moved back again or what will happen with that is curious. We definitely know from the Morbius trailer that Morbius and Venom are part of the same universe normally.
Okay, so Ian, let's wrap this up. You got a meeting to get to. I'd like to get to some work. Let's talk. Final thoughts on Eternals?
This is how devoted you are to this podcast?
Well, did you not say you had a heart out?
I did. It got canceled while we were gone.
Oh, well, then let's add another 30 minutes to the clock. I'm sure the Geekscapists would love it. But Ian, honestly, final thoughts on Eternals. Did you say everything you wanted to say? What do you think?
I mean, I'm sure I got more, man. I mean, when we talked about Icarus being ridiculous. Oh, we didn't even get into Thena at all.
Oh yeah, tell me.
I mean, Mad Weary. So I was going there a bit with the whole Crystal and Dane Whitman Cersei triangle. So Mad Weary in the comics actually was a thing that Cersei had, and all it is this idea that they don't generally get reset unless they do somehow get killed, and then they're regenerated, right? And Mad Weary is this thing of, okay, well, they have very human minds, more or less. So you live a million years, you sometimes go a little fucking crazy. Okay, so again, in the comics, it happened to Cersei. The Unimind maybe fixes it. In the comics, they did this whole thing about this bond that Cersei does if she actually gets involved with someone like a human, all that, and she's hoping that's going to fix it. So anyway, notwithstanding that, I found the choices of it to be extremely convenient. And then are we supposed to think that post the Unimind, was it cured? I'm not really clear on that. Were you clear on that? I don't fucking know.
No, some things were not clear in this movie.
I still felt that, other people don't agree with me on this. I thought that, Angelina Jolie's scenes were great, when she's in them. I think she took material that wasn't well written for her and still made it work. She has great presence on screen. I thought it was cool as shit. Whereas again, I was disappointed in Gemma Chan. and I thought that Richard Madden stuff was fine, but I thought Kate Harington was great. You know, Selma Hayek. You know, I was a bit disappointed mostly of this character. You know, millions of years old, knows everything, doesn't really know that much, and dies pretty freaking easily. I thought as a rule they all died pretty freaking easily.
Yeah.
You know, I really like Gilgamesh. I mean, again, I think that if they did a second one, everyone shows up again because they just get, you know, rebooted by the
Okay.
Celestial Machine.
You don't
I
see
think anyone's
Eternals.
out.
You don't see Eternals popping up in a cosmic film with other cosmic
They
characters.
absolutely can. And listen,
Yeah.
I've always thought the cool thing about the Marvel Universe in the comics is, as I was saying, is they pop up elsewhere. There's a point where Crystal from the Inhumans was a member of the Fantastic Four and then becomes an Avenger later, you know? Wanda and Pietro, you know, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but they were, you know, not really evil. They become Avengers. Then Quicksilver marries Crystal from the Inhumans, so he's essentially an
has a
Inhuman.
child.
But then, yeah, and they have a kid. Then, you know, Crystal basically leaves him and is hooking up with Black Knight, who had been involved with Cersei. So, you know, there's that whole mess. I told you Gilgamesh and Cersei were both Avengers, you know? I mean, I felt like it was really interesting to me in the trailer, and then we see that scene more or less, you know, in the movie of the whole conversation about the Avengers. That's interesting because they do become Avengers in the comics, you know? But I don't feel like that happens here. But I do think the movie set up that it could, because now they've fought humanity if they're allowed to come back, you know, after they're judged. So, you know, I think it's interesting. I do agree with you, and there's actually some precedent in the comics. Thor dealing with the Celestials is a thing.
Yes.
Okay, very much so. So that's absolutely a place where they could, you know, with Thor, they can revisit some of that stuff. And that would be cool and fun. I don't think as ideas they're going away, and I think that the ideas could have been really interesting, both the morality of it and everything else. And as I said to you, the idea, they're robots. No, they're like Vision, whom if nothing else, WandaVision made very clear that we should think of Vision as having his humanity. Now they set up Vision to be now in a place where he has to sort of rediscover it, right? But still, he has that capacity, and I think what we've seen is that was the point of the movie, is they found their humanity. You know, they're going to fight for Earth, and they want to do what's right.
I also think that these characters, as they progress in the MCU and they fit into whatever stories we get from other movies, etc., I think they're going to get softly remassaged narratively to fit things. I think the things that happen in this movie are, some of it's vague. I think some of that stuff's going to be redefined in the same way that things like Iron Man 3 was redefined in some places.
The big question is who should be incorporated. You know, for instance, I don't think there's any way they don't find a way to get Kingo somewhere, because
he's great.
Kamal's great. Everyone feels Kamal was great. The character's great and fun. You know, I think we definitely see him again. And let's be honest, you know, I mean, they owe it to us because he wasn't in the third act.
That was
a little
no fucking scratchy. Yeah, no sense.
No sense. He had something else to do. He had to go work out.
Yeah. And I would like to see Gilgamesh back, even though he has a demise in this film.
And I think they easily bring him back. You know, I think they easily reboot him, and I agree with you. I'd like to see him again.
Druig and Makari. Do you find a way for that to happen? I mean, obviously they're going to have a little bit of an adventure with Pip the Troll, but
you know, if they do, I mean, maybe, you know,
Icarus flew into the sun. Not that that's lethal,
but again, it can be rebooted. And bear in mind, a reboot means it's back to factory settings.
Right.
So there should be really zero memory of the 7,000 years on Earth.
But in Sprite's case, that could be really tragic, and really there could be some good drama there.
No, human Sprite is on Earth.
But then there's going to be a new Sprite that is like, I'm a synthezoid.
Same thing again.
Yeah.
Right.
Ian, I think I'm going to see you again for Spider-Man Homecoming, and shortly thereafter, I'm going to see you for Hawkeye. Yeah, or No Way Home. Yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home and Hawkeye. Some good shit coming down, brother.
We got a few good things coming.
And then unfortunately,
Doctor Strange is going to be a while.
But we get Morbius.
Oh boy,
we get to sit in that theater together in early January.
I think we're going to have to do that together, right?
Oh, we're going to do that together. We're going to drag Justin with us, and whoever is out there, Geekscapists, who want to come along and watch us sit through a movie that's probably going to cause one of us to bleed throughout our nose as our brain pops, and
Listen,
we try and keep it all.
It's not going to be as bad as The Spirit. So
Hold your, don't
should I
be
have not
crazy.
said that?
Yeah, and Garrett has a great point. I love this. Kingo needs to be on screen in a Thor film. He needs.
I mean,
to have
he name dropped him, right? That has to happen.
Yeah.
I agree.
That'd be fun. Speaking of fun, Geekscapists, that's our show. I'm gonna let Ian go, and I'll let y'all go.
Me?
No, you'll be back. You'll be back. You're just on temporary leave, but we got lots of cool stuff coming up on Geekscape. So you're gonna hit the subscribe button. You're gonna share the podcast or this video feed with your friends. Tell them to subscribe, but by hitting that little bell button on YouTube. You can get us on Spotify, and if you're listening to this audibly on Apple Podcasts, you can just share this file with your friends. Tell them to check out this podcast. We got 17 of these things on the podcast network, and it's gonna be fun. And there's a lot of Geekscape coming up, not just LA Comic Con, but right after that, we're gonna have December 17th. We're doing a live stream, long all-day live stream for charity again. Our holiday live stream was awesome last year. I think all 17 shows are gonna be represented in the live stream this year. And if you want to know anything more about that, or you want to be a part of Geekscape, email me, jonathan@geekscape.net. If you want to email Ian, don't. Email me, jonathan@geekscape.net. I'll give you an introduction. But you can follow him on Twitter, Ian L. Kerner. And I think some of these Geekscapists have befriended you on Facebook. And I see you chatting with Jim Paganelli and other people from the Geekscape universe. Ian, you're turning into a little local celebrity here.
I don't know.
Well, I know Garrett, who's in the chat, was super excited to hear from you, and I was too, dude. This has been fun. You made me think differently about a movie. I still like it, but
not as much. I think it's
cool. I think a little bit of doubt, but we'll move it forward. I mean,
well,
this Marvel MCU thing is an organism.
One of the things I want to say is I felt that Kevin Feige didn't shepherd this. I've heard, I can't say this is definitively true, but it's been suggested to me that Kevin, he has a lot more on his plate than he used to because he's doing the TV stuff, he's even overseeing comics, I mean everything, and that he did give someone else some power to shepherd this, and I think that was a mistake. I wondered, I suggested to people, was it the Oscar and felt they couldn't get into it with her, but I was told no, the movie was a long into production before she won that Oscar, so it wasn't that, but. I don't know. I mean, personally, I made some jokes about, English not being the first language for someone that had a writing credit. I'm just saying, I was
That's
pretty
not a joke
disappointed.
We can make, dude.
Well, I'm just making jokes, but okay. I'm just saying that, where this movie goes bad, it shouldn't have. That's my frustration.
No, always simplify these things. Always simplify these things. Always break it down to the core needs of the story, and then put it back together. And just
now, let me say this: even though I like them, Thor 1 and 2 don't touch the masterpiece that is Ragnarok.
Correct.
So there's an argument to be made that as a franchise, this course can be corrected.
And I said it already. I believe it will be. I believe there's going to be course corrections with these characters if they're.
But will they be in this franchise, or will they just pop out elsewhere? That I don't know.
I think they're going to be the cosmic appearances, cameo squad.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to see what the drop off is, which I think will be big.
And it's a 2.5-hour movie, so they didn't do themselves many favors on that.
That's a really good point, and and I've seen that said a few places, but the number it made, even it was below projections, but. I mean, they were getting 2 viewings as opposed to 3 or 4, in the critical time frames they were looking at, right?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't.
Well, buddy, that's the Geekscape Eternals Special. Thank you for joining me, dude.
Sure.
And in your defense, English is not my first language either. I don't even think English is my second or third language. I can't even speak it properly.
I didn't want to say it.
I can say it enough to say, love having you here. Geekscape is you subscribe and share it. And then we'll be back next week with a brand new Geekscape. All right, buddy.
All right.
Say hello to everybody.
Hello to everybody.
Peace, brother.